This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
We'll hang around the Eastern Hemisphere this week with the SRFs just heading up to north to Japan. Okayama is part of the free content here on iRacing, and as such, usually it sees relatively large fields. But this track can be deceptively difficult in this small car. Having finished every race he started on the podium, Gaspers could waltz away with another one as long as he can handle this technical track. We'll see who comes away the victor as we get ready to watch round 6 of the Weekend Warriors, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel and the iRacing Esports Network. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Stefan Schlacher. Behind the scenes is our director, the Dr. Amjad Yaman, and he's using cameras provided by Ducky Beard. Steph, Okayama is more of a club track anymore, but that's pretty fitting with the nature of these cars in real life.
Exactly, Joe. Once a Formula 1 track, and nowadays much more known for the Okayama GT, the opening 300-kilometer race of the Japanese Super GT series. 11 turns are marked out around these 2.3 miles of tarmac, laid into quite a tricky-to-reach narrow valley end. For once, we're not going to talk much about the off-throttle oversteer, but so much more about the on-throttle understeer these guys will have to battle against in turn 1, 2, 4, 10 and 11. Not only that, but the tricky back-to-back hairpins will also be a true test of skill to see who can manage to take the most speed through them. But to better show you how one can safely manage those tests, let us take you around the Okayama International Circuit with our GSRC lap guide.
Alright, we've got Stefan Schlacker in the GSRC SRF, so let's do a lap around Okayama. Down into the first corner, it can be a good place to overtake, but it's difficult to outbrake someone. This is a faster corner than most would expect. From off of there, you're quickly switching back to set up for Williams. This off-camber corner goes on for quite a while, and drivers will need to be playing with the throttle to balance the car the whole way around. Don't floor it too soon to stay out of the gravel, then you'll straighten out the Moss S. Be aware if you're too wide with anyone, because you'll both look silly if you tangle. Then you've got another heavy braking zone into Atwood. While the temptation will be great to try and make a pass on the entry, smart drivers will be setting themselves up for the exit. Not only does it open up to this long uphill, but it leads to the backstretch, which is the longest acceleration zone of the circuit. The draft offers a much easier chance to overtake with how underpowered the Spec racer is. But if you find things to be close when you come to the end of the straight, don't forget that you've got the hairpin here. It's very common that outbraking maneuvers get attempted. However, they're not always successful. This corner is heavily banked and it quickly switches back into revolver, meaning drivers will sometimes hold the outside to give themselves the inside into this left-hander. But the downhill bend can catch drivers out and it's surprisingly tricky. Then you've got Piper, which for a modern circuit has shockingly little runoff on the outside. Anyone who understeers off the track because they're greedy can scrape the barriers with ease. Then comes Redmond, which does see surprise attacks from time to time, but this leads into the slowest and most technical section of the track. It switches back for Hobbs, which is another uphill hairpin requiring patience with the throttle. You'll want to square off the exit because up into Mike Knight, you've got a very fast bend. This will bleed into one of the most important corners on the track, the final turn. It's not particularly slow, but it leads onto the main straight, and if you hesitate on the power, it leaves you very, very vulnerable. You don't want to give your opponents any chance to breeze past to the line. Which, by the way, hopefully you've now finished a lap around Okayama. If I'm honest, I love the beautiful views of this track being surrounded by the lush hills here in the Japanese forest, but as always, the Weekend Warriors is brought to you by Sim Stickers. Whether it's button boxes, steering wheels, or keyboards, they have you covered. You can find out more about them at simstickers.co.uk. Big thanks to them for sponsoring this season. This season, which has seen a championship mostly dominated by David Gaspers. He has not won every round. He's missed two of them for the top step of the podium, one of which he didn't arrive for. The other one was the first round, in which he finished second place. So it's been something of a season to remember here for David. He's jumped up to the top over Daniel Sadro with that latest win. Jerry McAreevy and Michael Shaw, though, really drivers that are coming to the fore with things. And don't count out Kane Halliburton because he won the first race and he's missed 3 rounds, but as long as he has a good remaining season, he could yet challenge for the championship. What about the Spec 2 drivers standing, Stefan?
Well, you say it's a season dominated by David Gaspers. I would say it's a rather interesting series because, well, Ian Haycock's 5th in the overall standings, first place in the Spec 2s, only 9 points ahead of Jeff Jacobs, and they switched after Owen Park there for that first place. And Fergale is in 3rd place, didn't gain a position, but only 27 points behind. Then we have a tie for 4th place between Bob Kern and Ed Doherty, 42 points for both of them behind Ian Haycock's. But we have to say Alex Crawford, he is sitting just 2 points behind Bob Kern and Edward Doherty for that 4th place.
So what exactly is this race going to be like? Well, a lot of the drivers are asking that. But as far as the raw stats, as we mentioned, we are in round 6 out of a 12-week season. There's those 3 droplets representing their worst result of those 12 rounds, the 3 worst results being dropped from their points. So that just gives a little bit of wiggle room in case drivers have real-life obligations. It is a 40-minute sprint race in this series. They will have 1 pit stop for fuel because they've limited the real fuel cells compared to here in the sim in this league specifically, down to require that 1 fuel stop. What's interesting is no matter how many drivers turn up, which we've had quite a few today, as we mentioned, they will ration the points so that you don't get an advantage if there's very, very few cars that arrive. They have 1 spare car to help save them if they do run into any sort of damage, which could be likely. There's some very tricky corners out here today. Hopefully it's not too tricky for you to subscribe to the channel that you're watching this on, which currently would be the iRacing Esports Network. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you go to their YouTube page, you'll know it because the subscribe button will be nice, bright red. All you got to do is click it, and there'll be all of the Weekend Warriors in your YouTube feed as we ride on board with camaraderie, getting a little bit of a tow from Fred Desai. And I'm not sure if he had an off that lap, though, and I think he did. So, unfortunately, that one not going to count, and he'll stay in 4th place. Currently, David Gaspers, who sits on pole, is pretty content as he's going to come into the pits and then maybe potentially come back out. But Jason Perry is trying to topple him here, Steph. He's in 2nd place and by less than a 10th.
Yeah, less than a 10th. Where is he actually? He's right now going through Revolver. That left hand downward turn. And one thing we kind of have to talk about, he is back, Stevie Ray, making our job as commentators that little bit easier because, well, he's the first car to always pit because that's his strategy. So once again today we will know exactly when the pit cycle will be open for everyone, and I have to say he's back in full force. 5th place, only 4/10 behind David Gaspers.
Driver who doesn't seem to be full force in qualifying is Daniel Sadro. He's been a contender for the championship for a couple seasons now. He just lost the points lead, but he's only qualified in 10th, and that's after numerous laps that have counted for him. In fact, 6 of his 7 have all been official laps, and yet he's still more than half a second behind Gaspers.
I think Daniel and me are kind of bonded with that. Like Lotus 49, Lotus 79, we're always going to find each other because we're both bad in qualifying, but we're making it really up in the race. And 10th place, it does seem like quite far behind for a normal race. But let's remember, we have here today around about 35 cars right now who want to qualify, so he's still in the top 1/3 of this field.
And there is reason to get out there and qualify currently because when we started this session, it was a little bit sunny, but since then the clouds have really come over. It was 117 degrees at the start of qualifying, 120 at one point in practice in the warm-up. Now it is down to 99 degrees Fahrenheit on the track surface, so drivers can get a lot quicker laps in as Stevie Ray heads up to 4th position now onto the 2nd row.
Yeah, and he's getting closer and closer. The last lap was 2/10 faster. He's now only 0.241 of a second behind David Gaspers. And that is only about 1.6 to 2nd place of Jason Perry. So Stevie Ray, as said, he's really back in full force. It's like he was on vacation and now has full battery charge available.
So Perry across the line one more time, a 145.9, his best thus far, and it's not going to improve this time by at a 46.3 that he just put down. camaraderie's certainly in it again. He's currently 3rd inside of the 2nd row. He's giving a tow to his teammate, Fred Desai. It was reversed not long ago when we last looked at him. Let's see what he can do when he is pushing the air out front himself. There's a few long straights out here, Steph. Do you think we'll see much swapping around between cars?
No. Even for the Spec Racer 4, which has quite a hefty amount of draft, even for it, it's not going to make too much of a difference. Maybe it's going to make enough of a difference in down the backstretch, into that hairpin. Maybe we can see something there, but apart from that, not really any drafting action here today.
Juracek just got very close to taking the pole away from Gasper's 16 thousandths of a second. And just as he did that, McAreevy followed him across and moved himself up into third, bumping Perry down to P4 and Stevie Ray all the way down to 6. We're watching him before. But we should mention our Spec 2 leader, who actually just pulled off to the side. Ian Haycox is currently on provisional pole for the Spec 2 race.
And does so in 5th place, just behind Daniel Sadler, who just went over the line, putting himself into 6th place. Now, 6th place might seem far back, but he is only 2/10 off the lead. Right now, we're actually having the first 15 drivers roughly within a second of David Gaspers.
Whew. That seems a little bit more representative of Sadro. He's never been the best at qualifiers, but he usually is up within the first few rows. As we watch Hugh Haycox, Ian Haycox's son, I believe. Is the son or the father? I need to check. Not the Holy Ghost.
Hugh is the son.
Hugh's the son. There we go. Yeah. Hugh is currently a little bit farther down the order than Ian, who is, as we mentioned, in 5th currently. Hugh's last lap, his fastest at a 46.9 is enough for 15th. Make that 16th as he gets bumped down.
David Gaspers, what a lap from him, putting himself 9/10 ahead of Miroslav Juracek. Now Gary McAreevy jumps in 5/10 behind David Gaspers, but what a monstrous effort was that from David Gaspers.
Well, it was close for most of the top of the field for a while, and Gaspers has thrown down the gauntlet. Michael Shaw gets back in there. He looked very good in warm-up for a long time, leading the timing charts in practice. So he's got that number 55 up to speed around here. This is Edward Doherty on screen, currently sitting in 11th and 3rd of the cars in the Spec 2 in qualifying. He'll get one more chance after this if he decides to take another lap. But as he crosses this time, let's see if he can improve on that 46.2. No, he cannot.
Only 2 thousandths of a second between himself and Zachary Rivard there for the 10th place. So yeah, Doherty still has, I think, one more lap, if I see this correctly. Yes.
Yep. It's under a minute now, but he started it with about a minute left to go. We're on board with Juracek, who's now been bumped all the way to 5th. This has been a crazy end to the session. Usually we don't see the temperatures drop this drastically, this quickly. So as he comes down the front stretch, let's see what the number 84 can do to improve his position. Drivers out there frantically trying to take advantage of the cool track, and it doesn't count for him. He will be able to go around one more time.
Has to make it count, Juracek there, as we're now looking at Gary McAreevy right now sitting in 2nd place. And here comes Michael Shaw through the last turn. He goes, let's see what he can do here. Right now sitting in 4th place.
Position, yeah. And this is going to be the checkered flag for him, but it's not faster. His 45.8 will stand as his quickest lap. Who's going to be the next across the line here? We got a lot of cars in the pit lane I'm having to scroll through. Looks like Paul Godden. Paul coming down in the number 213 in 29th place. He really needs to improve, and he does with a 47.8. That will, well, I thought that was going to jump him up. It apparently keeps him in 29th after that.
Right behind him, Sadler just crossed the line with a 45.8, moving himself up to 4th place.
On board with Juracek. Don't forget, ahead of him also is Steve Elson. The number 56 tends to... Oh, wait, no, excuse me, he's behind him. Apologies to my director for that. Thought he was ahead of him, but I was looking at the wrong corner. Juracek will be the first across, but Elson under the gun because he's in 13th, so he really needs to improve. Juracek, 3rd row's not too bad for him. Number 84 is going to be coming around the final corner and to the front stretch, pushing it all the way up to the edge, kicking up a little bit of a dust. He's got a 45.9 as his fastest thus far. And this last one will not count for him, unfortunately.
No, it did. 45.6, jumping him up into 4th place.
Ah, not sure why it didn't show for me. Elson also went faster on his last lap, but did not improve his position. He stays in 13th. Nicholson improves up to 15th. Hansen as well up to 22nd. The last of the cars, I believe, have streamed across the line. So with that, we are going to let you in on our starting grid here for round 6 of the Weekend Warriors. David Gaspers is on the pole yet again, looking for a 4th victory of the season, I should say. Jerry McAreevy managed to put it into the front row in 2nd place. David Sanchez, didn't really watch him much, but clearly fast today. 3rd on the grid. Miroslav Juracek, fastest on his final lap, puts it in 4th place with Daniel Sadro starting P5. Michael Shaw will be 6th position with Jason Perry in 7th and Ian Haycox in P8. Fred Desai starts off in 9th, and the early pitting Stevie Ray will start in the top 10.
Zachary Rivar only missed out on that top 10 position by 0.026 of a second. Edward Doherty rounding out the row 6th there, 2/1000 of a second between Rivar and Doherty. Stephen Elson in 13th place, alongside him Christopher Patterson. Ross Nicholson will be lining up in 15th alongside him. In that row number 8 will be C. Love. Adam Bradshaw only down in 17th position, not where he normally should be to be expected, but I'm very sure that his fighting spirit is woken up. Brian the Short in 18th, William Martins in 19th, and running out to top 20, will be Bob Kern.
Younger Haycox is starting in 21st with Rick Hansen next to him in 22nd. Nico Schuk will be 23rd. Dominique Bureau will start P24. Quarter century mark belongs to Aaron Vagley. Then Tom Gradwell in 26th and Jeff Jacobson in 27th. 28th position will be Wayne Palmer. Inside of the next row has Paul Godden in 29th, and Gary Wobolt will be outside of him in 30th. The last few are Aaron DePoy, Julio Furcolin, Nathan Guess, and Jean Pereira and Logan Moir did not set times. Checking to see if they're in the session, and I do not believe they are. So looks like we will have a 33 car field here today for round 6 in the Weekend Warriors. Are already lining up behind the Porsche pace car. We'll do a short warm-up lap, then we will go racing for 40 minutes. Curious to see if anybody has problems on the pit entry here today. As Steph, that if you don't know how to enter into the pit properly, I think we could see a few black flags.
Oh yeah, it's most certainly a very interesting pit entrance, not only because of how tight you have to make that pit entry, but also it has a little bit of a weird kink in it between the second last and last turn, and you're also having a little bit of a left-right fast chicane right when you come down to the pit limiter. So tricky pit entrance for sure. But it should make for a very interesting pit strategy, because you really do not want to get held up behind someone else.
That's true, and you can see the Porsche pace car ducks in where you can't enter into pit lane. You have to go in early and commit to that second to last corner. Doesn't wait long, David Gaspers. He gets on the throttle well before the green flag and starts to streak away. Now the green flag officially waves. You can see how much they have strung out behind him. Down into the first corner, he's going to be handily ahead of Sanchez, who manages to get second away from
Perry!
Oh no, and we got a spinner, Jason Perry, to the inside.
Making it 4 wide now in the midfield, still 3 wide going through turn 2, and Patterson and Rivar come together, and there's another wreck.
Oh, that was a little bit sloppy, and Patterson almost came back onto the track in the midst of the field and suddenly stopped as everybody whooshed on by. So that certainly shakes things up in the mid-pack and puts a big gap between 4th and 5th. This is hugely helpful to Sadro.
Yeah, it was a little bit of an awkward situation there for Perry and Juracek. Perry just a little bit too eager on the cold brakes. We now have a 3 wide, therefore that should be 8th position in the field. Going into the hairpin right now, and Steve Elson comes out the best.
Oof, but he nearly got into Doherty in the process. He was given just enough space. That gives Elson 9th position. Desai slots in behind him in 10th. A little bit of action behind. C. Love manages to beat out Ian Haycox to 11th, but it's a chain reaction. It keeps going down and down and down. Bradshaw trying to challenge Ian Haycox, but also keep Nicholson behind. Nicholson does stay in 14th position, and Doherty, I think, is around.
Yep, that was Doherty. I think he got tagged there. Yes, he got tagged there by Steven Elson. A little bit of an awkward situation there. Once again, Elson trying to do a little bit of a dive bomb, and yeah, it just seemed like Doherty wasn't aware of that.
It didn't quite work out. This is our top 4 working their way through the first corner for the second time. Gasper's still leading Sanchez in second. McAreevy keeping a close eye on them in 3rd position. Daniel Sadro as well in 4th at the back of the train, and they've spread apart by 2 seconds ahead of 5th place Michael Shaw.
Still lots of fighting right now throughout the field, especially around that 20th position right now. 19th, 20th still under contention as Aaron Fuggerly tries to overtake with that Rick Hansen through the inside of turn 4.
Watching Juracek in a battle with Stevie Ray, who's going to get to the inside. Had a nice slipstream up the backstretch down into the hairpin. Does he try to make it complete? He's got the inside of this corner, but he's got to be fully passed by here, and he is before they get to Revolver when it switches back and plunges downhill. Moves Stevie Ray up to P6 as Nicholson's off once again. And this was in the hairpin, all on his own.
Rather interesting there for Nicholson, but not too much of a hassle for anyone else around him.
Battle for 11th place, Ian Haycox.
Oh, sure.
Taking it out with Bradshaw.
In the first hairpin, loses it completely on the apex and then battles it throughout the corner and actually saves it right in front of a pack of cars. So Shuk, very great car skills there, staying in 19th place.
Drivers you see side by side behind him are Hansen and Short. Short's to the inside, seeing if he could maybe take this one away. Nope, he's going to back out of it. But unfortunately, he might get swamped because here comes Wayne Palmer to his inside, coming in late and deep on the brakes. That gives Palmer 21st.
Oh, who is that?
That's De Silva. William Martins De Silva around at the first corner and has to wait for the pack to go by. No contact. That was all on his own spinning.
Yeah. On the brake. Just too much brake. Gets the rotation wrong, and around he goes.
And Elson with an issue coming onto the backstretch. This gives him a slow exit, and Fred Desai a whiff of 8th position. Is he going to take it, though? He's not looking inside yet. Little bit of a peek, but comes back to the racing line.
And see Love right there, back onto the back of Fred Desai, who has now gotten a little bit of a spoiler there on his Spec Racer 40.
Again, this is all for 8th place. C-Love falls off a little bit. Elson going to have to go slightly defensive. An early turn-in into Redmond keeps Fred Desai behind him yet again. Behind those two, you can see C-Love also trying to keep Adam Bradshaw at bay. Bradshaw in the green, white, and orange machine fighting for 10th.
And we're also starting to have a little bit of a battle for the first position, or at least for a second position between David Garrido Sanchez and Gary McAreevy. Sanchez actually had to go defensive going into turn 1.
A little bit under pressure now at this point as we ride on board with McAreevy looking ahead. They haven't, riding on board with Sadro at the tail of the train. You can see that they haven't lost touch with Gaspers. If they do start fighting, though, that could be bad news for them.
Yeah, right now McReevy really has to weigh his options. What do you want to have rather, that second place or staying in touch with David Gaspers? He thinks to himself, I want that second place. He actually has draft from David Gaspers that for sure will help him into the hairpin. But he has to be careful because Revolver comes up quickly, and that's a left-hander favoring Garrido. Oh, very late on the brakes there for Garrido. And Gary McReevy makes it on.
It was a valiant effort from David, but just isn't quite there. He stays tucked right underneath the gearbox of McAreevy. Finally, as they come out of Piper, though, he's got to give it up and admit defeat. This battling has allowed Michael Shaw to gain a tenth or two. He's got it down to 1.9. We've got a big incident coming out of Revolver. Looks like Aaron DePoy involved in that one. Christopher Patterson. Just towards the back of the field. And I think it started with DePoy.
Yeah, it is starting between DePoy and Steve Perry. DePoy just turns in quite sharp. Perry is still there, and on my screen that's a little bit of netcode involving there, which kind of lifts up the left front tire of DePoy, spinning him around, and that creates a little bit of a more awkward situation there as he turns in front of everyone, and it kind of looks like Patterson just spun on his own.
Yeah, I think he got thrown off by that, unfortunately.
Yeah. Slammed the brakes right there on the apex to avoid the spinning car.
That'll certainly upset it. Meanwhile, back up to the leaders. Still all in a train. No change for position since we last looked. It is still Gaspers, McAreevy, Sanchez, and Sadro. But we might have a change behind them between Shaw and Ray. You could see Ray taking a little bit of a look and then deciding against it.
Oh, in front.
Oh!
McAreevy got spun around.
Oh, and unfortunately, he's going to act as a pick as Stevie Ray gets to the inside of Shaw down through Revolver, completes the pass in Piper. Great heads up by the number 55 or by the number 11.
Yeah, as we go into replay for that, it's a little bit of an interesting situation there because McAreevy is slotting in behind David Gaspers, and Garrido Sanchez once again late on the brake. Doesn't really help that McAreevy has a little bit of a wiggle there turning in, and because of that, Sanchez right there and sadly turns him around.
Yeah, car a little bit late to turn in. Sanchez, many places he could go in that situation, it seems. Oh, we had it. And what happened to Sanchez?
Just interestingly pulled over.
Strange, they have a spare car. Don't think he blew the engine or anything.
No, he just pulled over to the right, started to brake, and went into pit lane.
Well, that is disappointing. It was such a tight battle up at the front. All it has done is meant that David Gaspers has pulled a gap over Sadro, who's fallen back to 3 seconds behind his main championship rival. Not going to be happy with that, especially now that he's got the likes of McAreevy, Ray, and Shaw very tightly behind him. They work their way downhill to the technical part of the circuit once again. Still have 30 minutes left to go in this race. It has now become sort of a race for best of the rest. The battle for second between multiple cars, while David Gaspers once again finds himself running away from everybody else.
Yeah, now it's really going to be interesting how the cars behind can manage to get that gap back as Michael Shaw into pit lane he goes. It's not at a 60 board, it's actually right at the start of the pit wall, those two yellow cones.
And I think this should be within the pit window.
I'm not sure. Stevie Ray hasn't pitted yet.
Yeah, that's true. Kind of surprising.
um, as we can report, David Garrido Sanchez, he just disconnected from the server. So, yeah, seems like a little bit of an emergency on this side. Hopefully, all is well.
McAreevy still tucked in behind Sadro. A little bit of damage on the front of that SRF.
Speaking about some damage, Brian D. Short, that is a car that is now no longer a Spec Racer 4, that is a modified. Oh, and okay, so that was on lap 5, it's already like a
So we got a pass for second going on. Daniel Sadro under attack from Jerry McAreevy, who's got the inside into the hairpin. Unfortunately, this opens the door for Stevie Ray, but he can't step through it. He backs out of the threshold as Daniel Sadro fins him off around Revolver, keeps third place for the moment. Don't forget Steve Elson back there. He may have fallen off of this top group, and he lost a few cars in this train, but Bradshaw's still in there. Fred Desai is still chasing. Bradshaw must have gotten by Desai at some point when we weren't looking, because I believe they were switched last we were here.
Juricek goes into pit lane, so I'm pretty sure that by now the pit cycle is open as Juricek, big wiggle there into the pit lane. Makes it safely though, probably an off track that might have even been an unsafe pit entry because he was quite heavily on the grass there.
I'm starting to think Stevie Ray might not be doing his usual strategy.
Yeah, kind of disappointing right now.
After we hyped it up so much, Juricek getting his work done, and Michael Shaw was relatively close to him, if I'm not mistaken. Juricek out and moving. Shaw has the momentum. You can see he's coming up just as he reaches the corner right behind Juricek. So Juricek will now be our highest pitter, despite a slightly longer stop than the number 55.
Yeah, Juricek obviously taking his spare car, so he now has the clean 01. And actually, let's have a real fast look at who are our gainers of this race, our biggest movers of the race. And looking at that, it is actually Dominic Bureau right now in 11th plus 13 positions showing on my screen, alongside with Gary Walbot in 17th, also plus 13 for him.
And he did get a qualifying lap in. He started 30th position. Wolbolt should be pretty happy with that. A few drivers have fallen by the wayside, and a few have pitted that are behind him. 215, still running smooth.
King about people pitting, Stevie Ray into pit lane he goes.
Ah, there it is. He's going to have to readjust his fuel calculations then, unless everybody else is going to be short to the end. As number 11 comes in and hits the pit window here. Elson also in.
Much indeed. So, Bob Curran also in the pit lane.
We haven't talked about it in a while, but the Spec 2 race is currently being led by Bradshaw. He's actually all the way up to 4th now that a number of these top runners have come in ahead of him.
Yeah, and because of that, he is now also plus 13 positions. So, yeah, Bradshaw, really great race from the 205.
Ooh, Stevie Ray came out just ahead of Miroslav Juricek. That could be important later on in the race.
With, interestingly, a pit stop that was over a second slower than the one from Juricek.
The temperature is at about 107 right now on the track surface, so still relatively hot, but not the coolest that we've seen. Riding on board with Miroslav as he tries to duck into the draft. Behind them, we got a little bit of a battle for position between two drivers who have pitted. That's Shaw and Jacobson, or excuse me, that Jacobson hasn't pitted, so this is a little off sequence for the number 240. How much is he going to hold him up, or is he going to let Michael Shaw by? Shaw locking up the brakes, but he is successfully through.
Yeah, and Jacobson, rather interestingly, our second place Spec 2 driver right now only in 14th place. So if this continues to be like this, he's going to lose a lot of points to Ian Haycox, who is right now in 6th place.
I don't see many other drivers, or any other drivers, I should say, coming into the pits until all the way down to Rick Hansen, who finally comes on in. There's our leader on the screen. That's David Gaspers, leading by 3.1 seconds over Jerry McAreevy. Now, did we see McAreevy get past Sadro? Actually, I think we did.
Yes. I'm pretty sure we did. Yeah. The interesting thing, though, is after the awkward situation with Sanchez happened there with McAreevy, this battle pack really fell off the rear of David Gaspers.
I kind of wondered if they were riding his coattails, riding on the coattails of Adam Bradshaw's Fred Desai. In fact, he was giving him a little bit of a bump draft down the backstretch to find them some more speed. These two have not pitted yet.
Right now for 11th place between Nico Schuck and Aaron Fögerle. Going into the hairpin right now, still side by side between the two, as Fögerle now has to back off again, so he's not going to gain that 11th place.
Schuck up from 23rd on the grid. He still needs to take his pit stop. In fact, the top half of the field effectively still needs to come in, save for a couple cars here and there. Weaving their way through Redmond and Hobbs up to the top of the hill. Little wide for Nico Schuck. That puts him under pressure once again. Aaron took a look to the inside, but decided he didn't want to try it quite yet. Maybe onto the front stretch here as both of them elect to continue on just about at the halfway point. A big lift through the corner hurts badly for Nico Schuck. Vegley knows it. He gets to the inside. He's got the momentum. Now he's actually got a nose ahead. But under braking, he's got to finish it. And I think he's got it. Could see an over-under from Nico Schuck. Not quite.
But I'm pretty sure this won't be over going into the hairpin. We might see Nico Schuck come back there on the back of Aaron Fögerle. So yeah, through the moss as they go for the 11th time. And right now, Stevie Ray, your leader of the pit cycle, is down in 14th position.
Stevie Ray, you can see half a second ahead of Juracek, despite them coming out close together. Miroslav, we haven't seen make any attacks quite yet.
Speaking about attacks, Nico Schuck was thinking about it into hairpin. He had the speed, but he did back off Aaron Fögerle. So Aaron Fögerle able to defend his 11th place successfully into and through the hairpin.
Looks like a lot of people electing to wait as long as possible for their stops.
Except for Adam Bradshaw, who now comes into pit lane.
All right, this is our Spec 2 leader. He and Haycox, who is behind him, and then Doherty, also Spec 2, stayed out. So Ian will inherit that Spec 2 lead for the moment.
Adam Bradshaw coming up to his pit stall, perfect onto it. Let's see where he comes out in relation to Stevie Ray, who is gonna come around the...
Did Nico Schuck have a problem? He's very slow, and I think he spun in the final corner.
Yes, he did. As we're on to replay right now, just Aaron Fögerle ahead of him, a little bit too slow, and Nico Schuck way too fast. Has to stay on the brake, and that really spins the rear around. Actually has a little bit of a lucky moment with Stevie Ray, who really had to get on his binders to avoid Nico Schuck.
So did Juracek. They had to go very wide around that final corner, and that allowed Michael Shaw to come up to this trio. These all three are for position, and all three have finished their pit stop. So if they're going to pass, they have to do it on track. Shaw is tucking up right behind Juracek, but he's not making any moves to pass.
Yeah, Juracek and Ray both took quite a rallycross line there through the last turn.
Gaspers is in. So is Sadro stays out, but Jerry McAreevy comes in.
Fred Desai comes in, Ian Haycox comes in, Edward Doherty stays out, as did, I think, no, that was Sadro that was going by. Lots of more people still going by. Where is Stevie Ray? Stevie Ray now coming down the short straight into the second last turn.
I don't think he was nearly close enough to try and jump our leader. Gaspers is actually out right now, so he is well clear. McAreevy follows him.
Ian Haycock still in his pit stall, as is Fred Desai, as Stevie Ray goes past. Same with Juracek and the rest of the gang.
So at this point, we're waiting on vaguely Hugh Haycox, Dominique Bureau, C-Love, Edward Doherty, and Daniel Sadro of the top of the field to come pit. It's a trio I had mentioned before, Ray, Juracek, and Shaw, one of our closest fights on the track. And again, big implications since these were all three front runners. And Juracek is not interested in waiting around anymore. He's going to duck to the inside. Oh, and a wreck happened in front of them. We'll get to that in a bit with this battle that involved Bureau, but down to the inside. What can Juracek do through here? Well, he can make the pass before they get into Revolver and complete it. That moves him to the front of the train ahead of Stevie Ray.
And as we go into the replay to show you what happened with Dominique Bureau, a little bit of an awkward situation yet again, involving this time Hugh Haycox, who just, too late on his brakes, tries to drive around Dominique Bureau, but ever so slightly taps him into the spin. And Dominique Bureau actually taps the front.
He figured we're in Japan, so he might as well do some Tokyo drifting. To wait with a display that unfortunately did not result in him catching the car at the end of it. See that we've also got C-Love pitting. Hugh Haycox has come in.
I'm honestly surprised how much longer Daniel Sadro decides to stay out here. And it makes me wonder right now if that really is the right call to make at this point. Sure, you're having the lighter car than the others, but with the right now higher temperatures on the track, that might actually be hurting you that ever so slightly to lose out on Gary McAreevy and the rest of the gang, as Juracek is now under pressure from Stevie Ray going down the back straight.
Is this going to be a reverse of what we saw before? Ray has the inside. Juracek doesn't cover him off. Oh, but he almost turns into him. A little bit of a lockup from Stevie Ray forces Juracek wide, and that's going to give the 7th position to Stevie Ray. I get the feeling that Shaw is loving every bit of this. He's been sitting in that popcorn position and hasn't been making moves to try and pass.
Daniel Sadro and Edward Doherty both into pit lane, and Edward Doherty really slow on pit entry. He actually did go down to pit speed limit well before the last turn. So Doherty really didn't practice this pit entry.
Gaspers is out ahead of Sadro, and McAreevy streams by, but he's going to slot into third ahead of Dominique Bureau.
And also speaking about David Gaspers, he just put in the new fastest lap after his race at 1:45.988, showing just so much more his dominance that he can really put on in this car.
Bureau and Vaguely have not pitted. Shuk, we're still waiting on. Paul Godden, Depoy, and Guess are the last of our drivers that need to come in. We still maybe got another 3 minutes or so before they hit the edge of that window.
I'm actually not so sure if they can actually make, after this lap, another one.
7th place. It's the same two we've been watching a lot so far. Juracek down to the inside. How rough is he going to be with Stevie Ray? Not rough at all. He is smooth in there on the brakes to retake that position, which has now become 6th position.
Juracek, second slide in a row, third slide in a row. Really putting on a show for our Japanese fans who are probably gonna love this.
And they're coming up on Vaguely, who still has to pit, by the way. So if he is slower on pace, they don't want to be held up. This could become a pick depending on if he stays out or not. And he's going to stay out.
Bureau also stayed out, so seems like they can go one more. We are right now only 13 minutes to go, sorry. So, yeah. At this point, I honestly don't know anymore how long these guys really can run on that fuel tank.
I'd be surprised if they make it past this lap.
Once again, a slide from Juracek there through turn 1, so Juracek really not looking well after his tires.
It has been a relatively hot day. It's kind of evened out at about 106 degrees on the surface.
This is now gonna get interesting. Juracek will have to draft off Fögele, but what will Fögele decide to do here? Once again, a little bit of a slide by Juracek through turn 4, giving already an advantage of momentum to Stevie Ray and Michael Shaw.
There's nothing that says that Aaron has to pull over here. So if he wants to race for this position, he is fully entitled to. They won't be happy with him. Stevie Ray would be happy with 6th position. Can he get it away? A little bit of a wobble under braking for Juracek. He tries to keep his nose in. No, he doesn't. He comes back to the racing line before Revolver.
And once again, a slide by Juracek. The slides are starting to get more and more for Miroslav there in this black and what is that, blue and orange car, as Michael Shaw very hard on the brakes behind them. He is smelling that 6th place.
And this will effectively be for 4th once the two ahead of them pit. And looks like Vaguely is in. Bureau stays out though.
Interestingly, Fögele seems to be splattering a little bit. So yeah, rather interesting how Bureau still can stay out here. As pretty sure he has to come in at the end of this lap though.
I'd say he's not particularly well known for fuel saving. In fact, he's got damage on the car, which will hurt his fuel mileage just a little bit. He's not the only one that's still going. Shuk is still out there, and Depoy is as well. 2nd place has been staying about what you see right here. Macarivi ahead of Sadro by 3/4 of a second. 10 minutes to go. I get the sense that Daniel is going to have to turn up the wick a little bit as a tiny little lockup from Macarivi shows he's certainly pushing.
In behind, I'm still watching the battle for that now 5th position between Ray, Juracek and Shaw. And once again, Juracek through the hairpin, a big wiggle for him. Out of Revolver, a big wiggle, and now also here through turn 6. Very wide through it, actually with 4 wheels on the grass on the outside. He is pushing that Spec Racer 4 to the absolute limit right now.
Dominique Bureau is the car you see ahead, and Dominique finally has found the end of that fuel tank. So he is going to free these 3 to fight for the spot just off the podium, 4th place. Stevie Ray with a nice gap to Juracek now that they come back onto the front stretch. Shaw close, but we haven't really seen him make any attempts yet.
I wonder if he right now even thinks that he has the speed to challenge Juracek, but it does seem like he has the speed. So yeah, Shaw, just Michael, try to do it, because I'm pretty sure that you could get past Juracek and then battle with Stevie Ray for that now 4th position.
Let's see if he makes any signs that he's going to do anything on the backstretch. If he does not, we'll try and run you down the order here in a moment. This is a decent exit from Shaw as we ride on board, looking ahead at the number 84 of Juracek. We've seen this before, where he is tucked up underneath, but just doesn't even pop his nose out or anything. Indeed, he's going to make a big lift and wait. So let's run you down the stories of how it's been going here up at the top of the field. David Gaspers is your leader. He hasn't led every lap of the race, but the only ones he didn't lead were in the pit cycle. He was at the front of a train of 4 for much of the race before some incidents split them apart and gave the number 23 free rein. McAreevy is behind him, been chasing at about 3.5 seconds back, so a mistake from Gaspers could still put this into play. McAreevy probably is more concerned about what's behind, because Sadro has been clutching just at the tail of that car. He's lost a little time since we last looked, because remember, it was 7 tenths. Now it is 1.3 tenths that he is behind, and he's holding down the podium positions with a great race today. Stevie Ray pitted a little bit later than we thought he normally would, but he is currently in 4th and having a great fight here just off the podium with Miroslav Juracek, who's now caught him back up despite going a little off track on the final corner there. The 84 stuck in the middle of this sandwich for the past few laps. What's the next 5 look like there, Steph?
The next 5 is led by the 5.5 of Michael Shaw in 6th place, just behind Miroslav Juracek. He started in 6th place, still in 6th place, about 13 seconds behind your leader of David Gaspers. And we already have a little bit of a gap down to the next car, Steve Nelson, running all alone in his 56 car. He himself gained 6 positions to make up to his right now 7th place. In behind the 76 of Fred Desai in 8th place, but he is starting to catch Steve Nelson by about 4 tenths each lap, only 1.5 seconds now between the two, so you might soon see something happening for that 7th place. Along with Fred Desai, he's bringing Ian Haycox. He's starting 8th place, right now 9th place, and right very hard on the tail of Fred Desai, chasing down that 7th place of Steven Elson. Last car on the top 10, that is Adam Bradshaw, the 205. 7 places gained for him. Starting 17th, right now 10th place. He's 2.5 seconds behind the 3 cars ahead of him, but he might also be able to jump on that train for that 7th place.
Right now the leader in the Spec 2 race is Ian Haycox. As you mentioned, close to Fred Desai. I'm sure he'd love to put a car between himself and Bradshaw, because that is for position for the win in the Spec 2 race with 5 minutes left to go, just as David Gaspers sets the fastest lap of the race, extending his gap over everyone 4 seconds back to Jerry McAreevy now.
Very interesting incident. In front of them, Nico Schuck, he was in pit lane, drives out and immediately proceeds to spin himself out through turn 1.
Yeah, and Schuck had a second pit stop. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe he messed up his fuel. Actually, I'm seeing 32 seconds he was in there, so maybe he was getting damage repaired?
He was actually changing tires.
I'm not sure that it did him much good, unfortunately. Meanwhile, look at this battle on screen. Once again, for that 4th position, coming down towards the hairpin, Stevie Ray is going to be on the outside of Juracek. Juracek able to take 4th away. We've seen this swapped back and forth multiple times between these two.
Michael Shaw once again had a little bit of a thought out of the hairpin, but Stevie Ray slammed that door shut, nearly slammed it so hard that it got open again. But yeah, Stevie Ray and Miroslav Juricek. That is going to be a lovely, lovely bread at the end of the day.
I still am wondering about Shaw and what he's got going on there. Not really much of a reason to save fuel, especially this late. He did have a bit of a short stop at 9.2 seconds, but I think at this point I would imagine that he'd have enough as Gasper sets another fastest lap ahead of everybody. Only lost 5 cars I've seen so far in this race: Palmer, Sanchez, Rivard, De Silva, and Nicholson. This is a battle for 21st position. Patterson and Godden. Fortunately, with all the action up front, we haven't really given them a whole lot of screen time, and they've been swapping this position back and forth this lap. They are still fiercely competitive, even down here in the mid to lower pack about positions, because every position counts.
Speaking about being competitive, Stevie Ray and Miroslav Juricek continue to be quite heavily invested on their braid. As this time, though, Stevie Ray not able to do anything against Miroslav Juricek.
And 8th position is going to go to Fred Desai. Haycox was trying for it, couldn't quite make it stick. He was around the outside of the hairpin. Desai denies him. If he keeps doing that, Edward Doherty could quickly catch up to the back of that pair. Going to be 2 laps to go this time by. There's our leader, David Gaspers, and the number 23 has now extended it to 5 seconds ahead of Jerry McAreevy, and the gap is growing.
It is growing because David Gaspers, once again, you can see it on the top right of your screen, with the fastest lap of the race, 1:45.557, 4/10 faster than Gary McAreevy, who himself did put in a personal best lap of 45.956, but it's just not good enough against the pace that David Gaspers has.
Gaining a little bit coming off of Williams down through the Moss S. Chances are running out for Stevie Ray. He's got to figure out how he wants to execute if he wants to get this 4th position. Juricek has been fast. Stevie Ray certainly looks good today. And they need to worry about Michael Shaw behind them. He could snip through if he sees a chance. Covering off the inside, Juricek holding to the right side of the track. Stevie Ray, interestingly, giving him a bump draft this time. Stays all the way down to the inside, shallow entry into the hairpin for Juricek. Stevie can't do anything with that.
Yeah, it does seem like right now that the braid is in the oven and Stevie Ray just waiting to finally eat it and get that position on the last lap away from Miroslav Juricek.
So Juricek, they're going a little wide at Piper, but held the car together. Ooh, and a little wide once again, coming through Hobbs. This is our leader, though, who is taking the white flag right now, David Gaspers. Didn't set the fastest lap of the race this time. McAreevy actually gained a little bit on him, but it's too little too late for that. This is the battle we want to keep watching. Stevie Ray looking down maybe at turn 1. He does head down to the inside, but unfortunately the apex is taken away by Juricek. Have a little lap.
Oh, Juricek!
Oh, big mistake, and that's going to hand it over on a silver platter. Stevie Ray gets by. Michael Shaw says, thank you very much. That's at least 1 position. Shaw up to the top 5 now. They head into Atwood. This is the corner where they really want to be close to the car ahead to get the opportunity, and I don't think they are close enough to do anything unless there's a misshift or something for Stevie Ray.
What a costly mistake by Miroslav Juricek. Braking on the grass, shown by example there, not a very good idea.
They accordion together. Shaw nearly gets into the back of Ray. Juracek nearly gets into the back of Shaw. Shaw covers off Miroslav down into Revolver. Can't do anything with that now. This is allowing Ray to start to pull away. Stay with it up until Redmond, and then we got to duck away from this group. Fortunately, Juracek can't do anything with it quite there. A little bit of a slide from Shaw, but now we've got to go to our leader because David Gaspers down the front stretch takes the checkered flag with another victory, his 4th of the season.
Yeah, what a great drive by him. Gary McAreevy takes home 2nd place.
There was a bobble from Shaw.
Action,
sorry. Shaw went off track, and Juracek has the momentum. I think he's going to snipe him at the line, and he does. Wow. Behind them, Fred Desai is going to manage to come in ahead of Ian Haycox, who is our winner in Spec 2. Perry's fighting with Hugh Haycox for 13th position. This is for Spec 1. And though he's got a draft, it's not enough of a draft. Hugh Haycox is going to be able to take that one away. Well, let's take a look at that finish with Juracek and Shaw. Sorry it butted in there. It's just I saw a little bobble, and then it looked like Shaw had to catch the car. You'll see it here from onboard Miroslav.
Yeah, it's rather interesting, that one, because Juracek first has the wiggle, and then Shaw has the bigger wiggle. Both go quite heavily off the track there. And yeah, just Juracek able to be the better rallycrosser.
So there's the finish across the line between those two. Hopefully we'll get to talk to at least one of them, but before then, we are going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Stick around because on screen you'll see all the upcoming races here on the GSRC. Welcome back to Okayama Circuit. We just watched round 6 in the Weekend Warriors. David Gaspers was your winner, and boy, was he dominant here for his 4th of the season. In fact, he's only missed the top step of the podium in one race that he's shown up to, and that was the very first one. Macarivi followed him home, not too far of a gap back. It was 4.5 seconds, and then Daniel Sadro clambered to stay with them. He finished 3rd in the final step of the podium. Stevie Ray with a nice fight and winding up going from 10th to 4th. Juracek barely snuck through by about a 10th to finish in 5th place ahead of Michael Shaw. They swapped that position twice in that last lap. Great stuff between those two. Steve Elson finished 7th behind them with Fred Desai in P8. Ian Haycox, our winner in the Spec 2. He gets a 9th place. Adam Bradshaw with an impressive climb, going from 17th to finishing within the top 10.
Edward Doherty completes the Spec 2 podium there in 11th place, gaining 1 position from his starting grid. Seeloff, 4th place in Spec 2, 12th place overall. Yu Cox, one of the biggest gainer in this race, from 21st up to 13th. Jason Perry finishes in 14th after a 7th place on the grid. Bob Kern finishes in 15th place, getting himself 5 positions. Very quiet race from him as always. Dominic Bureau, he was in a few kerfuffles there. 16th place goes to him. Aaron Fogeley, after a very long first stint, he finds himself in 17th place. Rick Hansen, 18th place. Geoff Jacobson, 19th, and 20th is rounded out by Gary Walport.
Last few cars on the lead lap are Christopher Patterson in 21st, Godin in 22nd, Short 23rd, and for Colin 24th. Then you get to the lapped cars. Aaron DePoy, we saw he had some issues with a spin early on. A little bit of contact, of course, maybe could have helped that. He was 25th, Gradwell 26th, and Nico Schuck, 2 pit stops and comes home in 27th. Nathan Guess will be the last car to finish in 28th. Ross Nicholson, Martins de Silva, Rivard, Sanchez, and Palmer did not starts for the race. So with that, we've got our winner ready to talk to us. David Gaspers joins us in the booth. David, you had a few hangers on at the start of the race, and then when some of the action happened behind you, it looked like it was clear sailing.
Yeah, after that collision between Jerry and David, it wasn't that close anymore. So yeah, I was just saving tires before the pit stop, so I could do some good laps after the pit stop.
I saw in practice, it looked like you were trying to do a few runs into the pit lane. Were you worried about that pit entry maybe causing you issues?
Not really, but it's one of those that's a little harder to drive than, for example, last week where we just brake. And so I wanted to test it before doing it in the race.
Makes sense, and it certainly seemed to have paid off, as there was really no issues, it seemed, in your pit stop. This was a little bit more of a normal track here that a lot of people have driven at Okayama, but Zandvoort next week is something a bit unusual since it's the national track. What do you think about that coming up?
I don't know where we cut off the long version, but I prefer Zandvoort over Okayama.
It's understandable. I know a lot of people do not like this track. Well, congratulations, your 4th victory of the season. Another championship is looking ever closer.
Thank you.
David Gaspers, our winner here today. Steph is going to be talking to our 3rd place finisher, Daniel Sadro.
Yeah, Daniel, a little bit of an interesting race there. How was for you the first part of this race? Because you were there quite in the train for that first place.
Yeah, it was well, I guess it was a lucky race more than anything else. I just I qualified better than I should have. I had some draft on a cool track, so I'll thank Adam Bradshaw for that. So I started ahead of where I thought I should have started, and then that helped me avoid some of the problems. I was just hanging on, was able to hang on with Jerry when he was, after he got damaged. I could hang on to him when he was damaged, but obviously at the end I was not able to keep up with him.
Well, still a very good result. Obviously, down in 3rd place, you're going to lose a few points there to David Gaspers, but I think by this point of time, one has to think, is David Gaspers even beatable?
Oh, if he shows up, he's got the championship. If he doesn't, he won't. He races when he likes to race, and if he doesn't like the track, he's not going to show up. It's one of the things that makes him, David.
Well, looking on to next week's Zandvoort National, we're not going to do the full layout. That means we're going to take a very sharp hairpin after turn 6. How do you feel about, first of all, the track and about your chances there?
Well, I like the track. We ran it last season, and I think we just took some of the hardest the hardest turns out of it. So hopefully it'll be pretty close. People won't get too spread out. I'm looking forward to it.
In case people are wondering, turn 6, that is the left-hand kink down the wiggly street after turn 4. But Daniel Sandro, thank you very much for talking to us here today, and congrats once again on a very great result.
Oh, thanks, and thanks to you guys as usual, and of course thanks to Steve Ray for putting it on, and SimStickers for actually paying for you guys to do this. So thanks again, guys.
That was Daniel Sandro, today's 3rd place finisher, and meanwhile, Joe Peak talking to Stevie Ray.
Steve, in quite a battle for much of the second half of the race, you and Juracek had such a back and forth. Tell about it from your perspective. Oh, and it looks like we lost Steve. Slipped into the ether, unfortunately. I'll give him a second to see if he reconnects here, but if he doesn't come back soon, we're going to have to close up for the day. But Stevie Ray was the one we're watching trying to battle for P4 with Juracek and Shaw, and Juracek's mistake handed it over, and from there he just simply took it home. Well, it looks like he's not able to come back, so I'm not sure that we're going to get able to talk to him. I think we're going to have to close up for the afternoon. And that means that we want to thank our sponsor for the series as well, not just Daniel Sadro. We're happy that SimStickers is on board, and you can find more about them at simstickers.co.uk. Also, a big thank you goes out to iRacing for putting us on IESN. If you go to their website, or excuse me, their YouTube page, I should say, if you have a red button that says subscribe, that means you aren't subscribed yet. Click it and you'll get all of the Weekend Warriors in your YouTube feed. Thanks to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen, and additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today, Stefan, Amjad, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. As we mentioned, we're heading over to the Netherlands, to Zandvoort, but the short version of it, that'll be Sunday, July 28th at 3:45 p.m. Eastern. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.